But being seen is scary for those who are not in their full authentic selves. And so that's why it's connected. When we're ourselves, we're not afraid to be
Mm.
seen. When we just own who we are, this is really about owning,
Mm-hmm.
loving who we are, our imperfections, our messiness, our quirks, like all of it. Like, can you truly approve of these parts of yourself and let them be seen? Because it's so healing and so inspiring when we allow ourselves to show these parts, not just the shiny, glossy pieces. Like, nobody wants
Mm-hmm.
that. And
Mm-hmm.
also, it's not about only about other people and what they want to see. It's like, how do you feel? It just feels so crappy to contain our expression. It feels painful to hold our authenticity in.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel good, and it can feel constipated, like at times. I know for a long time when I was
Mm-hmm.
younger, I could feel this part of me. I wanted to be more myself, but I was afraid of what people would think. People would judge me.
Welcome to the Delicious Alignment Podcast, high vibing conversations with me, your host, Rhonda Ryder, where we discuss all things law of attraction, including money and abundance, releasing anxiety, loving your body at any size, making peace with food, health and wellness, and more. One of the things that's really lighting me up lately is my brand new Delicious Alignment group coaching and calibration program. I love my group. This is a semi-private program and an opportunity to connect with other like-minded women, men are welcome to, interested in living a joy-filled, delicious life. Sessions include coaching, calibrations, community, and maybe even a little, dare I say, channeling. This is a pilot program and therefore is only $67 per month when you join in May. On June 1st, it will go up to $87 per month. There are no contracts. For more information or to join us, go to deliciousalignment.com/group. All links are also in the show notes. Today's interview is with Po Hung Yu, founder of the Tao of Po podcast. I really love this conversation about the healing power of being your authentic self. Po Hung Yu is a teacher of feminine wisdom, an embodiment mentor, and a somatic healer. She guides people in their process of healing and cultivating a deeper relationship with their body and allowing their authentic expression to be seen. The foundation of her teachings are based in Taoism, energetics, and the practice of surrendering to the divine flow of life with consciousness and receptivity. Her experience as an acupuncturist as a holistic approach to her work where she integrates the physical, emotional, mental, and energetic realms. All of Po Hung's work is devoted to the remembrance of who we are and living from that place. In this interview, we talk about how Po dissociated from her body after sexual trauma and how she reconnected with it. How building a relationship with your body helps you become more of who you really are. How to stop comparing yourself to others. How physical pain or illness is really just stuck emotion. We also got into a little discussion about improv and how it can get us introverts out of hiding and really embrace our self-expression. I love improv. I wish they had it here in Asheville. Just saying, I'm putting it out there into the universe. Let's see what happens. All right, let's get started with the interview. Hello, Po.
Hi, Rhonda.
Great to see you this morning.
Yes, I'm happy to be here with you.
Awesome. I'm super excited to talk to you today. Like I said in the pre-chat, I was being a good student or interviewer, doing a little homework on Taoism and all the things, fabulous things you're up to. I'd like to start out with just knowing a little bit more about your journey that got you here. Can we start here? There, does that sound good?
Yeah, that's great. It's really actually very important, and I love it when people ask this question because it is really the root of why I do the work that I do. I came from a uh, a childhood that had a lot of trauma, like many people. Um, Especially in my teens, I had a lot of sexual traumas, and my parents got divorced when I was around 11 or 12. Um, and I had identity issues around being Chinese, first generation Chinese. And there was just a lot going on. And plus, you're a teenager, there's so
Mm-hmm.
much, the hormones are raging, and you don't know what the hell is happening, and
Right.
um, yeah, so I went into a really dark place after my parents' divorce and the first sexual trauma. And I had depression, and I tried to commit suicide at a certain point. And um, I had anxiety and self-hatred and shame, and you name it, I was going through it, addiction issues. And um, yeah, it was a very dark time, and for a long time. And it took a while for me to move through that and heal. But I always knew, even in the bottom, pit, darkest
Mm-hmm.
spot, there was always some knowing inside of me that I would make it through. Like, I had this deep determination and commitment to my joy.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I didn't feel that inside, the joy, I let that desire and that commitment pull me through. And so I started doing my own healing work, and here I am, helping others heal their trauma, getting into their body, because I was so disconnected from my body, very disassociated, like many trauma victims are. And so it took me a long time to really get back into my body and own who I am and feel my body. I was so numb, and I literally had the highest pain tolerance because of this numbness. So yeah, it's
Mm.
been quite a long journey, but a really powerful and beautiful one that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, and like I said before, I was listening to a little bit of your podcast, just different ones, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up and you were still playing, you were still talking to me, and I said, "Oh my gosh, that's really good," and I started listening again at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, and so the name of your podcast is
Tao of Po.
Tao of Po, which I love. Yeah, so I want to get into obviously more of what you're doing now, and because it's just really fascinating. I find it fascinating because a lot of the work I do is feeling the emotions in your body. And I understand that people that have had sexual trauma or get disassociated from their bodies. So, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so common because, and it's all subconscious, as you know.
Yeah,
And, I, as a young person, especially, I didn't even know, I never thought about my body. I didn't even know what sex was, really. I was like naive. So as a young person with that kind of trauma, it's like it was just this automatic switch that like turned off. That's kind of what it felt like. Like everything went dark after a certain moment. And that disassociation felt like, well, it looked like different ways. Like one way I became disassociated was like I just started gaining a ton of weight after the first trauma. Like it was just an automatic thing. I wasn't consciously trying to gain weight. I just like gained it. And it was my protective mechanisms in trying to keep me safe,
yeah,
try to like
yeah.
keep me from.
Very typical, right? Yeah.
Very typical. Like keep me protected from the quote unquote male gaze, or, try to make me appear less attractive so that nobody would want to hurt me, or, um, do anything, perpetrator-ish to me.
And
And
let's just, I mean, because you say it, you're very open about it. You were raped like twice, so
no, I was
that's
raped more than twice. I was raped
more than
multiple
twice.
times. Yeah, because what happened was for me, and maybe other people can relate, is that after the first one, I just like lost my mind. Like literally, I felt like I lost my mind. I didn't know who I was. I went into a very self-destructive place. And I was just acting out, at 13 years old, started drinking and smoking marijuana and hanging out with all the wrong people. And so from that experience, it kind of like spiraled out into other situations where I would be in like places that were not safe. And then I would find myself in a situation where it would happen again. And, you know, sometimes it would happen while I was under the influence, right? So it wasn't like somebody jumped out of the bushes or anything like that. It was in scenarios that were quote unquote social, but I was like
Yeah.
blacked out drunk or something like,
Right.
like I
Right.
was not conscious. And so, that's why it happened multiple times. And it
Not
wasn't,
conscious. Well, you mean you were not in your right mind because you were drinking, you were
no,
heavily.
I was actually like blacked out. Like, I don't know if you've ever drank to the point of blacking out.
Yeah, no,
What happened?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But
You would
so
know. You would know if
I
you
would
had.
know. Okay, I would
Yeah.
know.
So I started drinking at 13 years old because I was
Yeah.
in such pain.
So you were unconscious, actually unconscious at one time when this happened.
A couple of
A
times. Yes.
couple of times. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the root of what I'm saying is that when trauma happens to somebody, then it becomes a spiral. It becomes an entry point into a spiral of other possible patterns and events to happen. And that was the case for me. So, as you can imagine, yes, I gained all this weight. I dressed like a boy, I try to act tough. I became this like hyper independent woman on the outside. Like you would never think I was in pain by the way I acted and the way I walked and the way I looked. But on the inside, I was terrified and scared. It was
Mhm.
all protection. And it was brilliant. It got me through. It was a thing I needed to survive. But eventually I did not need that anymore, but I didn't know how to let that go because it was like a security blanket, right? I got used
Mhm.
to it. And so, yeah, the disassociation, like you start to not even feel the sensations in your body. That's a lot of what I teach too, is like feeling the actual sensations that are in your body. I didn't
Yeah.
feel sensations. I couldn't, if you could ask me to feel something, I couldn't. I was
Mhm.
numb
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
was checked out. And if I was having sex, I was not present. I was literally outside of my body.
Yeah. So then you went on this path of healing modalities or healing yourself. Did I read somewhere that you're an acupuncturist? Tell me about those things that you got into before you got into what you're doing now.
Yeah, I'm still a licensed acupuncturist, but just not practicing. Been licensed since 2011, and so that was my first entry point into my own healing because I started to learn about all these other types of healing modalities. I mean, I was raised with Chinese medicine. My stepfather was a grandmaster of martial arts and a Chinese medicine doctor, so
Oh my gosh.
I know it was amazing. And my dad was a Jesuit priest before he met my mom and is this Taoist spiritual teacher. Now he's basically like a monk. So I was raised with
Wow.
energy healing, with holistic healing. So it was a part of who I am. But I was in such a spin out until my early 30s, really. So like I would say 20 years of me really struggling and suffering deeply before I was able to start even like coming out for air. And that's acupuncture school was really the beginning of that for me.
Yeah. I just want to digress for a moment. Your stepfather, your father, they must have been going through the ringer when you were going through all this.
Oh my gosh. Yes, it was really hard for them, especially my mom, I would say, because I was living with my mom and my stepdad after my parents got divorced. I was still close to my dad. They all hung out because my mom and dad owned a laundromat, and right next to the laundromat was the martial arts studio that my stepfather
So
had.
they all hung out.
Yeah, they were
I
all
love it.
friends.
I like that. I like that.
It was
Yeah,
great. They made a
yeah,
conscious decision to do that, but like
yes,
they were terrified, like
yeah.
I said, when I was like 13, I tried to commit suicide. So I had to go to the hospital. They put me into a mandatory like a live-in home for like troubled teens. Like it was really rough, and I was so rebellious and self-destructive. Like my mom could not control me. Like nobody could control me. And I had my own money because I worked, and so I did all whatever I wanted to do. And so yeah, I apologized to my family for that, especially my mom, because I put her under a lot of stress. And she's passed now, but we've had conversations about
Hmm.
it.
So you started with acupuncture,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. So
that
that
was
was
your,
really my entry point. I was like,
yes.
wow, my mind started getting blown. I knew I always wanted to be a healer and help people, but I just didn't know what modality and how. But it felt so good to learn, first of all, like healing modalities. And then it also felt really good to serve, like to
Mm,
come outside of myself and not just focus on my own suffering, but to help other people. And so that was really powerful for me to do that. And when I became an actual licensed practitioner and working with my own patients, it was such a powerful learning experience because I got to practice guiding them and teaching them and taking my own medicine. I noticed myself like giving them suggestions or advice of things that I wasn't doing, and I was like, I started because I was use everybody as a reflection, as a mirror for myself, so I can grow and expand. And I was noticing that I was doing that, and so I from then on, I would just use all of the healing experiences I have with my clients and patients to grow myself, right?
yeah,
It's always both ways.
brilliant, because they are a reflection of you. Everyone, everything is a reflection of us. Yeah.
Yes.
What would you say your focus is now? I know you have a beautiful business where you're helping women.
Yeah, so I teach feminine wisdom. So, my foundation is Taoism. That's why my podcast is called Tao of Po. And I focus on the yin aspect, which is the feminine aspect, the energy of the feminine. And so that's like surrender and receptivity and softening and allowing. And so that's a core part of my teachings. But I am a somatic healer. I am an embodiment teacher and mentor, and I help women get into their bodies so that they can feel. A lot of people are very disconnected or in their heads a lot, um, like just spinning out,
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
and so I help them get back into their body, own who they are, and then also help them to be self-expressed and visible. And also, part of that process is healing trauma, like I said, and I do that through different kinds of modalities, including like inner child work or plant medicine and things like that.
yeah.
Mhm.
Really fascinating, because I was listening to some of your recent podcasts about visibility, and that, as you know, is something that a lot of us entrepreneurs, coaches deal with. Myself, just getting on Instagram, making videos, it was so hard in the beginning. It still isn't like my favorite thing.
Yeah, I mean, this also goes back to my history because everything I teach and everything I do is connected to my own experience, my own healing experience. So since I've been young, I was a hider. I was very shy, but then especially after the traumas, like I said, I did everything to protect myself. So I felt like for so long, I had this invisibility cloak over me because I didn't want to be seen. I was afraid to be seen. I felt unsafe to be seen, and I felt also unsafe to be heard and use my voice. And so, yeah, this work of like allowing that thing that's inside of us to come out and be self-expressed and be our authentic self is so powerful because that's where our gifts are. I think a lot of times when people talk about visibility, they're just thinking about showing up online. But really, for me, it goes deeper than that. It's about how willing are you allowing others to feel you?
Hmm.
It's to really see you, and in order for somebody to allow other people to really see them, they have to be able to see themselves. You can't, like, if you don't see yourself, then there's a wall where others, aren't able to see you either. So it really is about self intimacy first, really being able to connect with yourself and be honest with yourself about your patterns, the beautiful parts of you, like the whole range. And then allowing yourself to own that part of you or all those parts of you, and then letting it to be seen.
I see. Okay, yeah. So I was thinking it was more about visibility in terms of if you're a coach or you're a business and you want to get out there more, have more exposure.
Well, it is
But
partly that.
it is
It's
partly
partly that.
that. Yeah, it is partly that. But what you're saying is this is really for anyone who wants to just be more of themselves.
Yes, exactly. It's really about owning like your quirkiness, your weirdness, your messiness, your imperfections, as as a podcast host, like, and so many podcast hosts or any creator out there, it's like you got to look at these parts of you that are like, oh, I want it to be perfect. I don't want people to see me messy, or I don't want people to see the imperfections. And for me, I encourage people.
Yes,
You're
I'm nodding my head for those that are just listening. I'm like, yes, 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 absolutely. I don't
right.
want them. I want to cut out all my no's and my ums. I'm going to Toastmaster, try and get better. It's like, oh my God. Most people just hate the way they sound, when listening to their own voice or listening to it. Yeah, all of that.
Exactly. And so I'm a reformed hider and perfectionist and control freak and people pleaser and codependent. So I know what it's like to be like, oh, I want to appear a certain way. I want to portray this, perfect life. But the truth is we're human. And that's a big part of my teachings is like loving yourself and approving of your humanness. And actually, that piece of loving those parts allow you to soften the walls and allow people to really see you and allow you to just love those parts of you unconditionally and
Mm,
just allow you to be yourself. And that's what
right.
magnetizes. Like when we talk about coaches or business owners, yeah, they could do a lot of visibility work because they know when you show up as your authentic self, you are more magnetic.
Mm-hmm.
People are drawn to you, people trust you, people, nobody wants to listen to somebody who seems like put together, like they don't have like they're a robot or something like that,
Yeah, they're not totally in the moment because they're just focused on looking good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I help people just be themselves. Like I remember somebody said to me, the hardest and the easiest thing to do is be yourself.
Yeah. I used to have a company. I would teach video marketing and help women with their videos, and it was be you videos because yes, I'm so into that, being yourself. And that's the journey, isn't it? Just like more and more of letting go and accepting all those different parts of you. And I find that comparing yourself to others is a thing that often trips people up, myself included. Like I still, and I've gotten so much better, still sometimes will compare myself to these other speakers or teachers and think, oh my God, she's so charismatic. He's got such a huge following or whatever, whatever. And then like the other day, I had this realization like, you will never be like that person. I'm not talking about following numbers or anything like that, but their personality, because that you are not that person. You you want to be more of who you are. I want to be more of who I am. And then that gets more and more and more magnetic, just like what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a common thing that people go through. And it's not just with that, with everything. People are very much focused on the external versus the internal. And
Mm-hmm.
so, noticing when you are focused on validation from the outside versus feeling your own worthiness and value on the inside. That's the question. That's the inquiry. It's like, where is the energy? Is it you trying to pull it from the outside, or is it already living inside of you? And so, yeah, it's very common to be like, and social media is such
Oh,
like
yeah.
like a petri dish
Yeah.
for this. And I would say that, it's important to notice, I think it's good to see and allow these wounds or patterns to be activated so that you can actually heal them, so the process wouldn't be to like avoid the trigger or avoid the activation. It would be to feel, oh, I feel triggered by this person because I feel less than, or like I feel not good enough or whatever, and let yourself sit in that feeling and allow whatever emotion or memory or sensation to be felt. And that's the beginning point of the healing process. But a lot of times, what happens when people are comparing in this kind of scenario is that they try to do something external to fix the feeling, right? So they don't
Right.
go inside to heal. They want to put a band-aid on top to make themselves
Yes.
feel better in that moment. And so that could look like, oh, I'm going to post something like that, is fabulous and get a ton of likes, and that will make me feel better or something like that.
Yeah. That's why I really resonated with you because you talk about allowing yourself to feel the feeling. In the last 3 years, I've been doing this method called the Malison method in my practice, and we're actually feeling these feelings in our bodies. Where in your body do you feel it? All of that. And prior to that, it was like putting the band-aid on it, not look at it, not feel it, pivot, change the subject, feel a better feeling emotion. And since then, it's like, oh, but it's good to feel the emotion instead of just suppress it, suppress it, suppress it. Feel the emotions, then move it up. Feel better, right? Process it. What do you do once you feel that emotion, that negative emotion? Then what
Yeah.
happens?
Well, first of all, I want to say that when we allow ourselves to feel an emotion, it doesn't last as long as you think it's going to. Like, when we feel it may come back again and we get to feel it again, but usually when we just let ourselves be present with it, it just moves right through us. The thing that lasts for a long time is suffering, meaning just like holding it in and just spinning in your head about it. That can keep going and going and going, but feeling the actual raw emotion is relatively quick.
Mm-hmm.
But so then once the emotion moves, then there's spaciousness in our body. And because if we try to do something when there's no space, it's harder to actually receive or feel joy or or even use our mind in a way sometimes, like to do the law of attraction. I work with energetics, and so I believe in the law of attraction and receptivity and magnetism and things like that. So once we feel the emotions, we have this space to actually
Mm,
perceive. We have the space to use our mind to focus. We have the space to actually create what it is that we
yes.
desire.
Yes, yes. And it's many times it's like that emotion just wants to be seen. It just wants to be heard. Like us as people, we want to be heard. We want to be seen. And this emotion just wants to be seen and heard. And yes, I love what you said, how it doesn't stick around. It's not like you're just going to dwell on that negative emotion and suffer with it. No, the suffering is going to be released.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And as an acupuncturist, I've seen time and time again, and it was actually one of my specialties, of the connection between physical pain or symptoms or illnesses connected to um, contained, repressed emotions or trauma. And so this
Yes.
is like a very foundational piece of my work. And so, from experience and from observing the people I've worked with, once, I mean, like literally almost every single person who had a physical issue, we could track it back to an emotional experience or trauma where they did not process the emotion. They did not process the pain. And so once the pain was able to be moved through the body, their body started to shift. Things felt better, like their headache would go away, or they'd start to heal, and on a physical level. So, you know, um allowing ourselves to feel our emotion is beneficial in on multiple levels, one being the well-being of our actual physical body and health.
Yeah. So how did you track it? They would see it or they'd get an insight. Like this is what I'm picturing. It's probably from a movie or a TV scene where they're on the acupuncture table and all of a sudden they get this flash of insight. Like,
That
and
could happen. That
how
could
does it, how
happen.
do you track it? I mean,
Yeah, the majority of the time is from me asking questions. Like, I'm a detective. I'm a Scorpio, so we're very detective like, and I'm a body whisperer, and I feel undercurrents. I can feel people's emotions. I can feel
mhm,
things. I'm an intuitive. So, I would ask questions and track it back, because I would always get a hit. I could always feel when there was something off. And we always could find out that, oh yeah, that's when this happened. And I've been holding on to this resentment or anger or grief for this whole time. And just because they have the information would blow their mind. They'd be like, oh my God, this is so
mhm,
wild. But the next step is, after awareness, is actually the practice. And that's the part that's the hardest, I think, for most people, is actually being in the practice of feeling. Because nobody really wants to feel, like it's not, oh, it's not easy. And that's just the truth. Like, it's uncomfortable, but it's better than suffering, because I do have a distinction between pain and suffering. Pain to me is feeling the raw emotions. Suffering to me is more of like the ego and like the addiction patterns in our mind and the
mhm.
stories that we tell.
Yeah. Well, I feel like since I've been practicing feeling my emotions more, like what am I feeling right now? What do I feel like doing? Instead of like plowing through things like I've got to get this done and I'm miserable and I don't care. I just got to get this done. I said I was going to do it. Like now I'm like just no, it's all about feeling good in the moment and following my inner guidance. So I'm going to feel these emotions like if I'm feeling uncomfortable or not enjoying what I'm doing, then I'm constantly checking in. with
That's
myself
great.
and my body constantly all day long now. That's how I do it. That's how I roll. And
That's so awesome.
it is way different than the way that I used to be. Like,
That's very
God,
unusual. It's very, very unusual. Most
yeah,
people that I've worked with are resistant to it, but will do it over time. They will start to practice when they see the benefit of it and realize that it's important for them. But so many people that are living in the world
right.
are
No,
totally avoiding the feelings.
right. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to live this way. It really is. So, what are some ways we can deepen our relationships with our bodies?
Mm. I would say one way is to, I mean, there's a couple. So one that I always mention is mirror work. So actually looking at your naked body in the mirror, in a full length mirror, and creating that
I
kind
just took a big swallow. I don't know if you noticed it. I was like, no, no. Okay.
Yeah, right, right. I know exactly, exactly. Thank you for saying that because so many people feel that way. And that's why I mention this exercise so often because so many people do not look at themselves. They just look in the mirror if they're putting makeup on, or maybe they're brushing their teeth, or they're fixing their hair. But how often are people actually looking? Like when I talked earlier about visibility and how it's important for us to see ourselves first in order to allow other people to truly see us. This
Hmm.
is part of it. It's like, are we actually open to seeing all of us, not only the inner child and the pain and the feelings, but like our actual physical, sensual, curvaceous or whatever kind of body, right? With all the imperfections, the stretch marks, or the cottage cheese, or whatever, the aging. It's important to do this kind of work to really start to love on ourselves on that level. And then I would say something else like feeling sensations, like really start to open to feeling these subtle sensations in your body. And you could do a body scan like in the morning, instead of like a sitting meditation. You can start at your feet and just feel if there's
Hmm.
like, maybe there's heat, or maybe there's a tingling. Start moving up your legs all until you get up to your head. And go slow and allow yourself to just notice. And it could be something like a high sensation like pain, or like a subtle sensation like I said, tingling. So that's how
Yeah.
you can start to be with your body a little bit more. And then of
Yeah.
course the emotions.
It's definitely a journey and a
Yeah, it's a
process.
journey. It's a journey for sure.
On your website, it says you're seeing evidence in your life that it's time to go deeper within and shift from intellectual consumption and understanding to embodied healing and living. I love that. So, can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, because I work with a lot of women who are very brilliant, like smart women, really, really smart women, successful women, powerful women, and intellectual women, independent women. And I find that the pattern often is that they're very much in their head, and they're anxious, or they don't create space in their life. They're overwhelmed, or they're not present. And so a lot of times people are taking in information and consuming information and constantly learning, reading another book and another book and another book, or more YouTube videos and learning, which is great. It's good to learn and take in information. But there's a certain point when people will do it to avoid being in their body. And they're doing it because they're afraid to be in their body. Like it's actually a scary thing for many, many people to be in their body. So I just want to say how important that is to mention, because many people have had trauma. And so it makes sense why they would be scared to be in their body and why they would distract themselves with mental consumption, and wanting to constantly learn these things and not be in the practice of them. Embodied living and healing means that we actually need to feel and
Mm-hmm.
not just use our mind to practice or do the work. And I think mindset work is very important. Um, the mind and the body go together. This just like yin and yang, the masculine and feminine go together. But when we just prioritize the mind over the body, there's an imbalance there.
Yeah.
We need to create some kind of flow.
Yeah. And I think it's not necessarily trauma, and tell me what you think. Like, yes, so there's trauma, and then there's just being a part of the world, living in this 3D reality. And then not learning how to be in your body or be in the present moment. So you're constantly uh, looking for that next stimuli, as opposed to it's okay to sit and be quiet. It's okay to be still. It's like this unfamiliarity with being still, being in the moment, just sitting and doing nothing and just being in a meditative state. Or yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
you're right. I mean, it isn't just trauma. It could be generational trauma. It could be your trauma. It could just be living in this world because there is so much distraction. Literally, like myself included, the phone is so hard. I notice myself wanting to like check the phone, right? It has like electric, like they create it to do that, like the radiation or whatever the energy is that's coming off of it. Like, so there's so many things in the world that feeds
Yeah.
this, and everybody is distracted, so then it becomes the norm, right? So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the mind is a beautiful thing. Who doesn't respect the intellect and intelligent conversations and all of that? But you're right. Like, without that other piece of being still, that stillness, which I really appreciate my life so much, that I have the time that I can sit. I mean, when I was a single mom running around taking the kids, I could have found moments, but I didn't know how important it was to
Yeah, absolutely.
just go take a break, 5-10 minutes, and go in the bathroom and just breathe. Take three.
I mean, breathing
Beautiful.
is everything. You said, how do you
Yes.
get connected to your body? That is like probably number
Yes.
one, I would say, like just breathing, because we're so blessed that we don't even need to think about our breath. Like it just happens automatically for us. But when we actually put our attention on our breath, we notice, oh, wow, it's shallower than we realize, or maybe we're even holding our breath. I remember I used to hold my breath all the time, and that's a protective mechanism. So
Hmm.
allowing ourselves to take really deep breaths and allowing that oxygen to move through us is healing, emotionally
Yes.
and physically.
One of the things that I heard you talking about when I was listening to your show is your recent experience with improv. Yes, and I don't know if that's a way that you could feel your emotions or if it connects to what we're talking about, but I just love improv. I live in a smaller city now, so there's not as many opportunities, but I know you're in Miami, so it's like New York. I lived in New York, and you just have everything at your fingertips. So what are you finding about that in terms of visibility and fun?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I'm the type of person that leans into my edges. And when I work with my clients, I always support them to lean into their edges because that's how we expand our capacity. And being in the discomfort and feeling the sensations that arise when we're in that edge helps us even to expand even more. So for me, I knew that I needed to lean into this visibility edge for myself because I was feeling this desire and I felt myself feeling nervous about it. And I was like, oh, then I definitely need to do this. And, my whole life is a practice of visibility because, like I said, it's such a core wound, this hiding part of me. So I'm always looking for things, well, not really looking, but like following the whisper when I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is something that really is calling to me. So I signed up for it, and yeah, every week in every class, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to be messy, right? I'm messy in other ways, and I've shown my messiness on social media or in person, but there's something about performing and like it's obvious that you don't know what the hell you're doing and just doing it anyway and just having fun. So that has been a great practice for me. And I just think it's so important to lean into these practices that we feel called. Like everybody has that, and it could be something for somebody else, and it doesn't have to be around visibility, but like what is that edge for you that, and you feel it in your body because it keeps coming up for you. You're like, oh, that thing, and then it's like a whisper and a whisper, and a lot of times people will ignore that whisper.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the intuition, you just ignore it and ignore it, but then at a certain point you can't ignore it anymore, and you just got to go for it. And that's how I
Yeah. Well, with
yeah.
the improv, I remember I was doing it, and it's just so fascinating to see that you have the capacity to do it, that your intuition is just saying the first thing that pops in your mind. Usually we're just filtering. Well, I'll speak for myself,
Hmm.
in the past, filtering. And still, even today, even right now, am I filtering a little bit? Probably, even though I know I can edit things out if I say something I don't like. With improv, I mean, you're just going with the first thing that pops in your mind and you're saying it and you're just saying it. And I was just amazed at the things like, whoa, where did that come from? I didn't even know I had that data in my brain, and it's just like say the most crazy things,
Yes.
and like, where is this coming from? And it's just a wonderful confidence booster and a wonderful, like you said, letting loose self-expression. So when I hear you saying visibility now, I'm hearing visibility slash self-expression
Yeah, it's
is
all
what you're
about the
talking about. It's all
self-expression.
about the self-expression, but nothing is like improv that helps
Improv
you
is
with
next
that.
level, next
It's,
level. You know what I love about improv? The only way you can do improv is you have to be present. You
yes,
can't do improv if you're
yes,
not present, and
yeah.
you have to be connectable. You have to be open to connecting with your improv mates. And so if you're not willing to like connect and be present, it's not going to happen, And
Mm-hmm.
it's just a great practice in life. Like you said,
Yeah.
like, but being on a stage is on a whole nother level, and it's just so fun because it's just so ridiculous. Like anything comes out of your mouth and you're like, oh my God, my humor is like that, like,
You learn so much about yourself.
yeah, you do.
Yeah, and like, oh wow, I actually can do this, and it's just for fun, whether I'm good at it or not.
This is
But
why I'm always leaning into my visibility edges, is because I support other people to lean into their visibility edges. And so eh, I'm not somebody who teaches from a place of like, I've arrived and, and I'm above you. I'm still in my practice. Yes, I may have more experience or I may be further along, and that's why people come to me. But um, I, I don't, I believe that it's an ongoing journey,
yes,
and
of
once
course.
we arrive somewhere and then we start again. We begin
Yeah,
again.
and anybody that teaches otherwise is full of, you know what, because it's an unfolding, it's a journey for all of us.
Yes.
So this has been really a wonderful conversation. I just want to give you the opportunity to tell people what you're up to right now and where they can find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's been so lovely. Thank you for having me on. People can find me at taoofpo.com. That's TAOOFPO.com. And you can check out my website, and it has my podcast there. Check it out. I have an episode every week. And I have a program coming up called Visibility is Medicine. And I named it that because it's a portal. It is an entry point of healing. It is a powerful, powerful medicine when we allow ourselves to be seen, to use our voice, to be heard, to step into being our full, authentic selves. So I'm excited about that. It's a 3-month program. I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And I'm sure you'll share the links because my name is a little more complicated, but yeah, people can check me out on all the social media networks.
Yeah, great. And tell me a little bit more about your program because I find it fascinating. Visibility is medicine.
Yeah, just allowing ourselves to practice in community. That's like a big part of it, like allowing ourselves to connect with that edge that we have not explored, right? So if somebody is feeling like, oh my God, I feel this thing inside of me that wants to come out, but I'm scared to let it out, this is the place to practice this. And you got to heal the wounds because a lot of people have visibility wounds. People um, maybe were shamed or judged when they were young for their voice or wasn't seen. So there's all kinds of reasons why we have visibility wounds. So part of it is the healing of the wounds, and part of it is the practicing of leaning into those edges. And yeah, when I talk about visibility, because visibility is really about being seen, but being seen is scary for those who are not in their full authentic selves. And so that's why it's connected. When we're ourselves, we're not afraid to be
Mm,
seen. When we just own who we are, this is really about owning,
mm-hmm.
loving who we are, our imperfections, our messiness, our quirks, like all of it. Like, can you truly approve of these parts of yourself and let them be seen? Because it's so healing and so inspiring when we allow ourselves to show these parts, not just the shiny, glossy pieces. Like nobody wants,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
also it's not about only about other people and what they want to see. It's like, how do you feel? It just feels so crappy to contain our expression. It feels painful to hold our authenticity in.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel good, and it can feel constipated, like at times. I know for a long time when I was
Mm-hmm.
younger, I could feel this part of me. I wanted to be more myself, but I was afraid of what people would think. People would judge me. I cared so much about being liked. And
Mm.
so, this is really about like giving less fucks, honestly.
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah.
really giving less fucks.
Yeah, and as you're talking, it's just making me go back to that whole thing about comparing to others. And I had that insight the other day where it was like, oh my gosh, you are never going to be like so and so because you are not so and so. And then when you hear about human design, it's like, I came in with this design, this human design. I came in with that. That person came in with their human design.
I'm
Like,
glad that you
oh,
brought that back up because I
yeah.
wanted to say back then when we were having that conversation about exactly what you're saying is that we all come into this life with our unique frequency, our unique medicine, our unique gifts and energy. And our unique expression. So it's so important to allow ourselves to shed those layers so that true self can come through. And it just feels so much more fulfilling when we're just ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
not trying to be somebody else. For so much of my life, I was trying to be somebody I was not. And so, yeah, our uniqueness is what makes us special. And
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
until we realize that can we actually own that.
Exactly. And what I was going to say is that there was so much freedom in that insight, in that realization. Oh my God, stop trying to be like other people and
Yeah.
be yourself. You're like, this chill, bubbly, sometimes serious, sometimes funny, silly. Be who you are.
Exactly. It's so funny. I love that you say that because, I'm known for my full range of expression. Like I laugh so loud. Like my laugh is so ridiculous and like so crazy. Like I'm known for my laugh and I'm so playful and I'm like very connected to my inner child and I could be really silly and obnoxious or whatever. And then I can, I'm a healer too, right? So I hold space for really deep and dark things. And I'm also like very quiet too and introspective. So there's a whole range of me and there's a whole range of you. There's a whole range of everybody. Are you willing to explore those parts instead of just holding them in or containing them or hiding them? My program, Visibility is Medicine, is permission to let you come out.
Yes. Awesome. I love that. And that's where all the power is and the freedom is, being yourself, letting you come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you say, who is this program for? What is it, for women, men? Is it for entrepreneurs? Or I'm getting a sense it's not just for coaches or entrepreneurs, it's for anyone.
It's for anyone, but it is specific, emphasized for solopreneurs,
Okay.
coaches, healers, creatives, artists, literally anybody. But, I know that a lot of people who are in the solopreneur industry really could use help in this area, right? Because it's
Yeah,
very connected to their business. And if they're not willing to come out and share who they are, it directly impacts their business. So
exactly.
yes, I do support these people, and it's for all genders. This my other program, Yin, which is all about self intimacy, is for women only. But this is my program that's for all genders because everybody could use this kind of support for sure. And it's for like highly sensitive, brave souls who are just
Hmm.
ready to come the fuck out and be themselves.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. That there's so much freedom in that.
Hmm.
It really is. So that sounds awesome. All of the links will be in the show notes if you'd like to find out more about Poe's program, which sounds amazing. So thank you so much for being here. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you. I did too.
I hope you enjoyed this episode with Po Hung Yu. To connect with Po, go to taoofpo.com. You can also find her podcast, which I highly recommend there. All the additional ways to connect with Po are in the show notes. If you enjoy this podcast, I would love it if you would be so kind as to tell your friends about the show. Delicious Alignment, high vibing conversations. Just grab the link, deliciousalignment.com/podcast, text a few friends, post about this show on social, and let's share this resource with people interested in raising their vibes even higher on any topic. Another way you can help us spread the word is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Thank you in advance. I know there are many podcasts out there, so I appreciate you spending this time with me. Make sure to join my Delicious Alignment Abraham Hicks Facebook group and follow me on Instagram at Delicious Alignment for more inspirational support on many topics to help you thrive.